You just go to Charles.
You never know.
Take 81 to the you can go 81 to like Harrisburg without it. You got your own car.
Not tonight, no. This was really entertaining.
Fall ball. How many teams do they end up having? 3.
That's the hard part. Like, we play the same two teams.
It's smooth having fall ball teams. Yeah. Wish they would have. I think their age setup's a little different.
They always seem to play.
We fought that for a couple of years, but they don't quite follow middle league age guidelines. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good competition.
Not today. Learn a lot. So what time are you gonna have to leave?
No, it's good.
Okay, folks, if you don't mind, we're trying to get this started. My name's Scott Womack. I'm the moderator for tonight. On behalf of U.S. Virginia nonprofit, Ferguson News Media, we welcome you to take our sponsors to the bank as soon as possible. They're all named on the screen behind me. Our aim is to provide voter education and how to be a voter state election. Early voting beginning tomorrow. I'll make a couple of personal notes. I'm a paratrooper in the Army. I got sent to all kinds of crazy places to do scary things. This is scarier. The other one is like the West Virginia nonpartisan since about 1787. So I'm not going to be trying anything from any kind of angle. I'm going to ask the questions that were provided ahead of time. If there's some time at the end, we'll do a couple minute closing statement for everybody. And a couple folks get any questions Would you please rise and recite the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first candidate is going to be J.D. McCluskey, the state auditor. He's former Republican, father, and Republican nominee for Attorney General for the great state of West Virginia. Welcome. Okay. If elected, you will be the people's lawyer. Pitch us on why the people should hire you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your service, and thank you, Stephen, for putting this together and for everybody for being here. We live in a country where we don't have enough of these events. And we've got a big election coming up. We're 2 weeks out right now. And, for the last 8 years, I've got to be the state's auditor. For 4 years before that, I got to be in the legislature. I got to serve 2 years in the minority and 2 years in the majority. And I think, quite frankly, the experience that I got to have serving in the minority in the legislature was really, it was really important because, as we've seen, there's been a fairly significant Republican wave that's happened here in West Virginia. But the idea that I had to spend the first and my most important times in the legislature working with the other side and trying to figure out ways to sort of build consensus around issues that were important to my district was a really big deal. But as we are getting ready to have this election coming up, we created something in the auditor's office called the West Virginia Checkbook. And what the West Virginia Checkbook is a real-time look into all of the state's finances. And Greenbrier County and Lewisburg are part of the checkbook as well. And so if you live here in town, you have access in real time to your city's finances, your state's finances, your school board's finances, as well as your county's finances. And I say all of this because we live at a time when it is wildly difficult to find middle-of-the-road media. And one of the main things that we were really concerned about in the auditor's office was providing every single one of our taxpayers real information about what the state was actually doing with their money. The government speaks through spending. And so it was our hope to make West Virginia the most transparent state in the entire country. We've thankfully been able to accomplish that. There's no other place in this country where taxpayers have more ability to hold their elected officials accountable for how they spend their money than here in West Virginia. And I say all that because that sort of prefaces what is my philosophy in government, and that is to be the people's lawyer, you have to be able to do 3 things. First, you have to be able to defend the people of West Virginia from those who come in and try to do us harm. You have to defend the Constitution of the United States, and you have to provide the executive branch with first-class legal services. And I've had a private practice prior to my time in the auditor's office at a place called Steptoe & Johnson. I spent my career working for small businesses and businesses here in West Virginia, and I've spent the rest of my time serving the people of West Virginia because, I grew up in a house where I didn't have a lot of the problems that kids in the state have. And my parents taught me that when you're given an enormous opportunity, which they did, I had love and hugs and warm food and a baseball mitt when I needed it, and really amazing servant mentors as parents. They taught me and my sister that this is a really special place, and this is a place that deserves to be defended, protected, and it's a place where the people that live here, quite frankly, need to have a better opportunity to get into the middle class and to make this place really shine. And so I've committed myself, my life, my wife, and my kids to that endeavor. And I'm really, really looking forward to zealously advocating for every single person in the state of West Virginia.
Okay, thank you. Given the current state of play right now, would you have a role in distribution of opioid settlement money if you were Attorney General?
Yes.
And if so, what was it?
Yeah, so the way that the opioid settlement money happened is it went into something called the West Virginia First Foundation. And the foundation is a 501c4 nonprofit, with the idea being that they can then also raise money and spend money in a way that is very, very different than if the legislature were to control the money. The Attorney General is part of that foundation. He's a member, or she is a member of that board. But the board is controlled by its executive committee, and the board is, on its day-to-day basis, controlled by the executive director, which is a guy named Jonathan Board, who is one of the finest people that I've met. He has a background not just in healthcare, but in the delivery of really first-class substance abuse treatment facilities and treatment. You know, for me, what this fund is really about is two things. And I think the first and the most important is that if we're having this conversation, you and me, in 20 years from now, we have to make sure that the amount of people that fall victim to this problem is reduced by 70, 80%, because the state cannot continue to afford to not only have the loss in workforce, the loss in life, but more importantly, the loss of hope and misery that comes with substance abuse. And two, we have to make sure that we're taking care of people that are sick now. We have to make sure that we are providing a pathway for those who want to get better, to find employment and life and respect in the communities that they grow up in.
Thank you. How would your administration maintain the rule of law?
So, it's a great question. One of the most interesting things about our Attorney General's office is that aside from the Medicaid fraud unit, we don't have any law enforcement abilities. The Auditor's office actually has more prosecutorial authority than the Attorney General's office does. But I think the most important part of that question is that the rule of law is about reading the Constitution and the laws of the state of West Virginia in the ways and in the intent that they were written. And then to read them in a way that says, how are we going to use what our forefathers and occasionally what our current legislators have written to defend the right of West Virginia to live the life that West Virginians want. And so the rule of law is really about understanding what was the intent of the drafters and how does that apply to the current life of those people who you're defending at that moment.
Kind of really related question. It is, I guess, a little bit. So there's been a kind of ping-pong battle at the federal level with the Department of Justice, with both of the major parties claiming the other parties politicizing the institution, using it for their own nefarious ends. What kind of guardrails exist in West Virginia to prevent that? Or if there aren't any, what would you recommend?
So the Attorney General's office would have, in its constitutional authority, very little to do with a political fight. And I think the argument you're making is that the Department of Justice has been politicized, and the sort of FBI and those in the clandestine services are being used to the ends of the political party. Is that
Well,
correct?
that's the claim. The two parties are making of each other.
So,
Can't verify that.
if an individual citizen were to have their constitutional rights infringed by anyone, the Attorney General's Civil Rights Division would have the ability to defend any West Virginia citizen whose rights were violated by any federal office, only if those are constitutional rights. You know, I think at the end of the day, what we have is, and the reason why this particular office is so important, is we have a Congress that has delegated almost all of its duties to the federal bureaucracy. They move slowly, they move at an absolute snail's pace, and the attorney generals of our country, and sometimes in a partisan manner and frequently in a bipartisan manner, stand up and tell the federal bureaucracy that they have gone beyond what their authority is under the laws that they're acting under. And that has happened, in my opinion, because our Congress and our Senate have gotten to a point where they are so incapable of working together that change happens so slowly that it almost doesn't happen at all.
Okay, thank you. If elected, walk us through what you would do your first month on the job.
So, like I said before, 8 years ago, I walked into the auditor's office, and I was 34 years old, I guess, when I walked in the office. And I was taken over for a woman named Lisa Hawkins. So Lisa was our general counsel, and she was appointed to the office after Glenn Gaynor decided to go a different way. And Glenn and his dad had been in the office for about 40 years. And Lisa was a Democrat, and Lisa and I sat down, and she said, I realize that I'm a Democrat. I know I was appointed by your first opponent, but I'd really like to stay on the job. She said, I have a really incredible understanding of securities law, and the auditor's office is the securities commission. And so Lisa and I sat down, and I said, if you want to be here, I want to have you. I don't think there's a way that I can find want to ensure that what our office does is doing it as well as it can possibly be done, as fast as it can possibly be done, and as inexpensively as it can possibly be done. And so for the first 2 or 3 months, we sat down with every single person, every single division. We said, what would you like to have done if you could have talked to a brand new boss 10 years ago? And we took all of this incredible information and we formed it into what was going to be not just the ways that I wanted to make the auditor's office work, but the ways that my employees wanted to transform the office. And I don't know that they'd ever been asked that question before. And so we spent sort of the first year, one, implementing the transparency stuff, but two, implementing all of these sort of recommendations that came from my staff. I think the first thing in the Attorney General's office is to go around and find out who you have. You got to figure out who your team is. You got to figure out what have they been wanting to do. What are the cases they want to work on? What are the ways that you can make the office run better, work better, communicate better, and then start to put your stamp on things. But the idea that you're going to walk in and completely change the tenor and the way an office runs on day one, in my personal experience, that doesn't work very well. And what was amazing about that is when I have about 190 employees, and all 190 of them thought they were going to get fired because here was this dumb kid walking in the office who's a Republican, and I would run through a brick wall for those folks. They would run through a brick wall for me, and building that trust and that understanding, that communication with the talent that you already have on the ground, I think, is of the utmost important. And the second thing, I got to figure out who I need to go hire. And one of the things that's the most important part about our Attorney General's office is we have to have first-class legal talent. We have at every single level. And we've had several solicitors in a row who were Supreme Court clerks, people who are really at the highest part of the field, and then going out and finding a few more of those folks is really going to be wildly important to our continued success.
Great, thank you. I'll give you a choice. You can have 3 minutes for closing arguments, or I'll ask you one more question.
Why don't we see if we can do both?
Okay, let's pretend the legislature passed a law which you believe was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
As a state's attorney, how would you handle it?
If it is unconstitutional, then as the state's Attorney General, you have to make a very, very important decision. And that is, who is your client? And if it is unconstitutional in a way that infringes upon the rights of the people of West Virginia, my number one duty is to defend their constitutional rights. And so there is really no question there. The question is whether or not it's constitutional, and that's a difficult question. And you don't have to pretend that it might happen. I mean, that's a very, very real question. But the attorney-client relationship is such a powerful part of what it means to be a lawyer. And when your client looks at you and says, you are going to be my lawyer, you have to understand what that means. And it is my hope to look at every single person in West Virginia and say, I am your lawyer, and it is me who is going to defend your rights under the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. You have about 2 minutes.
All right, great. So, and I appreciate everybody's time, and I know that sometimes listening to lawyers can be a little bit boring, but from my perspective, we live at a time in a place that couldn't possibly be more uplifting. I never felt better about the idea that my children are going to have a future in this place than I do right now. But we have a lot of work to do, right? We have to make sure that we get our schools in order. We have to make sure we're delivering clean water and electricity and at a low cost. And we have to make sure that we are ensuring that those who are the least among us have better access to care. I'm talking about the thousands and thousands of children and elderly folks in the state who are not getting, in my opinion, the services that they're paying for and that they deserve and we all want them to have. It is my number one goal in life to ensure that West Virginia's government starts to do the things that it's supposed to do really, really well and does them in a way that makes every West Virginian proud. It is my hope that the next time anybody goes to the beach and they're wearing a Marshall or a WU hat and somebody starts to make that joke like, oh, I can't believe you've got shoes on or whatever it is, we can start to thump our chest and say, you know what, man, why don't you come see us? Why don't you come move to West Virginia? And why don't you come see what it means to be a West Virginian? Because the true thing that we're really defending is our values, right? We can talk about defending the coal industry or the gas industry or any of these other things, right? But West Virginia is a place that is unique in this country. And everybody else, in my opinion, has moved into this TikTok generation where everyone's trying to show how much they have, how much money they make, how big their house is, what kind of car continue to support our neighbors, support our friends, support our teachers, support our schools. And I think that uniqueness is what's really going to start to draw young families. And it is my greatest honor to get to serve the people of West Virginia, and I'm just so hopeful and thankful that I have this opportunity, and I will be certainly very, very honored to have the vote of anybody in this room who feels the same way that I do. So, and again, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Next up is Teresa Torreseva. She's the Department Attorney and Wheeling, and other, and the Democratic nominee for Attorney General of West Virginia. These questions will sound strangely familiar.
Good. Hopefully the answers may be a little different.
Okay, if elected, you will be the people's lawyer. Pitch us on why the people should hire you.
Well, I'm already the people's lawyer. That's really my job in West Virginia. I've been a courtroom lawyer for 30 years. I currently a lot of people call me the fire code lawyer. I represent public unions from school nurses, school teachers, firefighters, EMS, police officers all over the state of West Virginia. And really it is the people's lawyer. And I am someone who has courtroom experience and going after the rich and the powerful on behalf of the people who are not, which is really all of us. And so for me, being the Attorney General, being the people's lawyer is a continuation of a career's work of 30 years in the courtroom.
Okay, thank you. Again, would you have a role in the distribution of opioid settlement funds if you're Attorney General? And if so, what is it and how would you manage that?
So I think that what happened here in West Virginia with the opioid crisis is a great example of why the Attorney General's role is so important. Of course, what you speak of in terms of going forward and in terms of going forward and how the money would be spent and the role there has already been described tonight. But it is an example that the opioid crisis in West Virginia of how we need a chief law enforcement officer who isn't afraid to go after the rich and powerful and big national industries like the drug industry that pollute our state, poison our people, and then leave us holding the bag. We have EMS islands in West Virginia, and the reason that's relevant to the opioid crisis is what has happened with the opioid crisis is we've overburdened our public employees because they were on the front lines dealing with it. And now, as a result of that burden, the cost is so low, the money that has cost the state is so bad, the damages are so high, that what has happened is we effectively don't have the infrastructure to provide needed medical services on an emergency basis. So we've all heard them, stories of people that have expired, that have died waiting on an ambulance, and you wonder, and you don't wonder too hard, could they have lived? And so that is an example of why, and there should be an investigation of that right now, why that's happening as well by the Attorney General. But the opioid crisis, and I do have some criticisms of the way that was handled in West Virginia. That litigation should have been far more aggressive than it was. We should have come at it a lot harder, a lot sooner, and we should have been a national leader instead of a follower, because we were hurt here more than anywhere else in the country.
Okay, thank you. How would your administration maintain the rule of law?
Well, my administration would maintain the rule of law through a lot more aggressive investigations to find those lawbreakers. For example, why do we have poison water supplies in West Virginia and nobody's investigating? We have entire communities that don't have clean drinking water in their house. We give people in prison clean drinking water. And we have entire communities that don't have it. So I would enforce the rule of law in my administration by actually investigating violations of law. And also, it's a really good point. I'm going to bring up something partisan. I know Real West Virginia is not partisan. And thank you for that, by the way. And I think people appreciate that. I really do, and I respect that here. But in terms of my partisan point as to the rule of law, I am a Democrat. I'm the vice chair of the West Virginia Democratic Party. It's a role that I enjoy. And the Democratic Party is very strong in West Virginia. And unfortunately, our government does not represent Democrats. We have 30% Democratic registration, just under 30%. But about 90% of our government all the way down, all the entire Board of Public Works are all Republican. I would be a watchdog for the people because I'm not an insider in this government.
Interesting. I'm going to reprise the question about politicization. But I didn't talk about the federal level, because that was kind of using it as an example where both parties are claiming the other party is using the Department of Justice as a tool.
Yes,
At the,
we see that a lot.
at the state level, could that be a problem? And if so, are there currently guardrails against it? And if there are not, what would you do to prevent it from happening?
I do think we need more guardrails. I don't think there are guardrails. I do think that we see it, we all see it, citizens see individuals using their political office for their own political gain. And we also see one side doing what they're accusing the other side of doing, and it goes back and forth. And I do think we need more guardrails on that. And the guardrails we need are things that restrict when people are in office, the ways they can use their office, for example, to get reelected or to grandstand or to do things. Like, how many people have gotten something in the mail and they know taxpayer money paid for it and it's not relevant to anything but the political future of the office holder who sent it? And it outrages all of us. So I think your question is important. We do need more guardrails. One of the things I would do as Attorney General is at least make sure the laws that we have are followed. We all see a lot of violations of the laws that are on the books.
Thank you. If elected, then walk us through what you would do in your first month as Attorney General.
So it would be more fun if you talked to me about the second month or the third month, because the first month would be that focus on who is your team. And certainly, as a 30-year litigator, I can tell you that I would be heavily involved as the leader of both the investigations and the trial teams and cases. But at the same time, I would also lean on the resources. There are people in the Attorney General's office that have been there as long as I've been practicing law. So I would not approach it with any degree of arrogance, but with a degree of excitement. What I can tell you once that hiring, that initial putting your team together, which I don't mean to, that's why I said give me a month and then ask me what we're doing. But what I can tell you is I would dive in to investigations that I as a citizen right now do not understand why our Attorney General is not conducting an investigation to figure out why. Why is there poison water in certain towns in southern West Virginia? I don't know, but someone should be figuring that out. And it's certainly not individual private attorneys, which, as I understand, is effectively all that's happening at this point. So what I would do is beef up the Consumer Protection Division, beef up our investigations, and begin aggressively actually enforcing the laws that are on the books. Even with what I consider to be a very conservative Republican legislature, supermajority, and out of balance, there are plenty of laws on the books that can only be enforced by the Attorney General for people. And so I would begin very aggressively to do that. And I would do it with joy in my heart. Because one of the things that I see, and I mean that, one of the things I see and hate about being a citizen of West Virginia is when our people are taken advantage of. And we're always taken advantage of by these outside forces, and they become inside forces. And as Attorney General, I would build my team and aggressively begin a litigation practice of getting to work for the people. Much like what I'm doing now at law firm in Brandon.
Okay, thank you. Let's pretend then the legislature passes a law which you believe is unconstitutional. As the state's attorney, how would you handle that?
Well, I would, if I believed it was unconstitutional, so that premise and that hypothetical, there's no choice as to how I would handle that. An unconstitutional law can't be enforced. So your premise, as stated, leaves the Attorney General, in my opinion, no choice on behalf of the people. And I would make that legal judgment based on the law, not based on my political view. So I think we need to see more of that. We need, for example, the Attorney General needs to be an attorney. It's the top dog lawyer for everybody in the state, and there's so much work that the Attorney General has to do that doesn't get done.
Okay, thank you. Your efficient answers will beget some extra questions that I'm going to just bring up.
This actually could get fun.
It can get interesting. So, I'm a school board member in Monroe County, and we wrestle with discipline here. And state code sometimes says must, sometimes it says may. And so we're looking for paths for system of justice that is more restorative or rehabilitative than punitive. Is that something that the Attorney General office has anything to do with? And if it does, at the state level, not just schools, but just in general, the pipeline to prison, punish, kick them out of prison. Is that something that you would consider, or is that just out of bounds because it's not your problem?
Not at all. So you will never hear me say, that's not my problem. In fact, I'm very concerned about the problems you raise, and I think we all know different instances of it around the state. In terms of the Attorney General's role, so the Attorney General doesn't have criminal prosecution authority, but the Attorney General has broad authority. I smile because the lawyer in me is just like, no, broad authority to investigate all violations of law in West Virginia. So, and then to work with prosecuting attorneys to prosecute any criminal violations that occur, and also to bring, very often investigations don't result in litigation or any type of problem or anything in the court system. But what I can tell you I would do as Attorney General is I would actively use the office to advocate for citizens. And that doesn't just mean go to court. So it means in the public arena. It means using the investigative division of the office, lawyers, paralegals who investigate. There's so much information usually available through a simple investigation. And so I absolutely would help in the ways that the Attorney General could. The other thing the Attorney General can do, it is an important position. It's a big deal. It's a constitutional officer. There, the Attorney Generals all over the country for every state are very important offices and well respected because lawyers are generally well respected in the society. I would use that position every way I could to help people.
Okay, thank you. At this point, it's closing arguments. You have about 3 minutes.
So one of the most important issues that I think exists in the court system is access to justice. And access to justice means that the courthouse doors need to be open to people. One of the things that I've seen in 30 years of practicing law is that the rich and the powerful have no problem using the court system in order to solve their business disputes, to solve all of their disputes. And their money disputes are solved in the court system. Regular people's disputes, their money, their land, their family problems, they matter just as much. As Attorney General, I will be someone who promotes access of the court system by regular folks. And it won't be something people need to be ashamed of. If laws are violated, law breakers should be prosecuted. And that's not just criminal, that's also civil. Great change can come about for people in the society when the court system is properly used the way it's supposed to be. So as Attorney General, I will aggressively investigate violations of law. For example, the EMS Island crisis, the poison water crisis. I will also beef up the Consumer Protection Division in a way, it will be robust and it will be a main focus of the Attorney General's office. I will expand access of the Attorney General to the people by increasing the use of technology to reach the clients, who are my sister in Harpers Ferry, who are folks down in Mingo County, all the way south, and all the way north, and everything in between. And so, as someone who has litigated for 30 years in the court system, and by the way, most court cases, 98% settle out of court, what I would do is use the Attorney General's office to get results for people. And the thing that I always remind people is that many, many laws that are on the books can only be enforced by the Attorney General. I've been a Special Assistant Attorney General in my career 9 times. One of those times when we returned $16 million to the General Revenue Fund, $15.9 million to the General Revenue Fund. It was under a law being enforced by the Attorney General that only the Attorney General had the ability to enforce. So every other state who didn't have their Attorney General enforce that law through that case didn't have their consumers recover that money. So I will be an aggressive Attorney General, much like I've been an aggressive courtroom attorney representing the people of West Virginia, and will always work to serve the people.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, next up is Erica Kolnich, an accomplished attorney who runs a legal practice in Upshur County. She's a mother and is the Libertarian nominee for the governor of West Virginia. Thank you. And Vanessa, hold her much closer so the live stream can hear it. Okay, it's kind of like we talked offline. If folks are unaware of the Libertarian Party and its platform, how would you describe it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So many people are unaware of the Libertarian Party, and most people that have heard of it have no idea what it is or misconceptions about what it is. You know, the Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the state of West Virginia. It's the fastest growing political party in the state of West Virginia, and it's the third largest political party in the United States. And our basic political philosophy is, as long as you're not hurting people and taking their stuff, the government should leave you alone. And the government's only job is to make sure that you're not hurting anybody else or taking their stuff, and to protect your ability to live your life the way you want to and to be whoever you want to be, as long as you're not hurting people and taking their stuff, which is kind of an easy thing to remember. And I always tell everybody, it's basically what we learned in kindergarten, right? Don't hurt people and take their things. And some people ask me, does that mean you're left? Does that mean you're right? So a lot of people are confused about that. Are you red or are you blue? And I just say, I'm not on the color spectrum. I'm just, right? I'm just free. I'm free to be me, and I think you should be free to be you as well, whoever that means that you want to be.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of riff off of that a little bit. If, you know, in the wake of Citizens United, where corporations are individuals now, what's the Libertarian Party's and your approach to a corporation who may be doing some sort of harm to the collective us, not an individual necessarily?
Sure. Well, if corporations are harming people, then they should be held accountable. We don't necessarily, the Libertarian Party, advocate for preemptively telling corporations, you know, do this, don't do this, but certainly holding them accountable via the civil justice system, holding them accountable via civil penalties. So a lot of people think that libertarians mean that, you know, corporations are going to run rampant, take over the world, blow things up, and we're going to be okay with it. That's not true at all. We definitely believe in holding corporations accountable for any harm that they do to the environment, for any harm that they do to people.
Thank you. Voter registration statistics show that unaffiliated and independent voters are the largest growing block of voters in this state. Are voters ready to elect someone from outside the two main parties?
I think that they are, or at least that they want to be, right? I mean, you know, like it or not, it's kind of scary. I know it's kind of scary, right? You are looking at me like, who is this crazy woman and why is she putting her time into running for governor as a third party? That's insane. I know what you're thinking. And you know, I can tell you that I've been traveling all over the state of West Virginia for the past 18 months. And as polarized as our system is right now, I have only ran into, I can remember them, 4 people who have been mean to me. If you were a Democrat or you were a Republican and you were running for office and you were walking up to people at things like Bridge Day or the Roadkill Festival and you were saying, hi, my name's Susie and I'm running for governor, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, you'd have more than 4 people who had been mean to you, and I really haven't. And I think that that's because people have recognized what I have recognized, that, you know, the Democrats, and no offense to the Democrats in the room, I love you, the Democrats were in control of West Virginia for a very long time. During that time period, we were at the bottom of all the good state rankings and at the top of all the bad state rankings. The Republicans took over. We have a Republican supermajority now, and no offense to the Republicans in the room, I love you too. But you know, the Republicans took over, and you know what didn't change much? We're at the bottom of all the good state rankings and at the top of all the bad state rankings. And I think that people feel that, and I think that people realize realize if we're going to have change, if we're really going to break that cycle, we're going to have to do something different. I think that people feel that polarization that's coming from DC. That's not really us in West Virginia. In West Virginia, and I think somebody said it up here earlier, I'm not sure if it was Teresa or JB, but somebody said, we've always been a little bit different in West Virginia. We've always taken care of each other. And, we've never asked each other, hey, are you a Democrat? Hey, are you a Republican? When we've, pulled over to help somebody change a tire, or we've helped each other with a flood, or taken care of our neighbors. When people come to visit us in West Virginia, they always say, oh my gosh, everybody in West Virginia is so friendly. We're just different here. And the fighting that's happening in DC is starting to spill over into our state. And I think that scares West Virginia people. I do think they're ready for something different.
Thank you. So I was recently elected to our local school board. And
Congratulations.
Condolences. And I went to my free, new guy training and was handed this tome of state code that has with education.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a reasonably smart guy, but it makes for some pretty tough reading.
Yeah.
I assume pretty much every branch of the, executive branch has a similar weight of legislation that seems like there's always added but never taken away.
That's right.
I assume the libertarian approach is to kind of pare that down. The question is, how? How do you do that?
Well, I think you just have to dig in and you have to start taking a look, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, once the government passes regulation, they never go back in and take a look and say, hey, is this working? Do we need this? They never reevaluate, and it's gonna take some folks getting elected who are willing to do the scary things, which is dig in. What you're talking about is a portion of the Code of State Regulations, some statutory stuff, but mostly the Code of State Regulations, and jump in there and say, do we need these things? Are they working? Are they serving us? Or can we pare them back? And it's just going to start, you know what they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So we're just going to have to start somewhere.
We'll wrap the closing arguments in with the last statement here. How would you describe your leadership style?
I would describe my leadership style, well, that's a great question. I think I would describe my leadership style as open. I run a law firm. I built my law practice. I have 4 locations in the state of West Virginia, 50 employees. And I would describe my leadership style as an open door. I'm very transparent, which is what I think the governor's office should be, by the way, and the entire government of the state of West Virginia. I plan a lot, and I lead by example. I don't do, or ask anybody to do, rather, anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And that's how I would describe myself as a leader. I lead by compassion. I love people. I love everybody that I lead. I love West Virginia. That's why I'm doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank
have
you.
2 minutes to wrap it up.
As I said earlier, I'm sure that, folks look at me. I'm sure there's some of you who look at me and think, you're wasting your time. Why are you doing this? And I'm doing this because I love West Virginia. I want West Virginia to be the type of place where my daughter, your kids, they don't feel like they need to leave for opportunity, for hope. And whether or not we do it intentionally or not, we teach our kids that they need to do that, don't we? I know I felt that way. I left West Virginia when I went to law school, and I intentionally didn't go to WVU because I thought if I go to WVU, I'm going to be stuck in West Virginia. And I associated West Virginia with poverty, not because my mom didn't work her rear end off. She did. She was a bartender. She raised me on a bartender's salary, and I saw her work hard, but we were always poor. And I thought that was because we were in West Virginia. And I feel that some of our kids think that way. We wonder, Why do we have a drug problem in West Virginia more so than other places? Why do we have an economic problem? Why do we have a mental health problem? All of those things are related. But you know what we have in West Virginia more so than any other state? We have pride. There's something that runs through all of us that I call West Virginia DNA. And it makes us more alike than it's different, than we are different. Whether or not you're a Democrat, whether or not you're a Republican, we are all West Virginians. And it is that thing that makes you look across the restaurant at somebody when you're in Ireland or Mexico or North Carolina or West Virginia. And when Country Roads comes on, you start humming it to yourself and there's somebody across the restaurant singing it and you know that person has something in common with you. We are losing that in West Virginia and we have to get back to it. I think I can get us there. It's going to mean you have to do something scary and vote for somebody who's not a Democrat or not a Republican. Just somebody who's a West Virginian like you and wants to save this state by leading us to a place that says the role of government is just to let you be whoever you want to be, and it's okay if your neighbor doesn't want to be the same as you. We can still get along and still have a government that functions in West Virginia.
All right, thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Thanks.
Next up is Mr. S. Marshall Wilson, a veteran, missionary, teacher, former delegate, father of 9 children, who is currently the Constitution's Party nominee for the governor of the great state of West Virginia. And thank you for your service, sir. Sir.
How are y'all doing?
All right, let's get right to it. If folks are unaware of the Constitution's party platform or its ideology, how would you describe or summarize it?
It's very straightforward. Our intent is to recruit and elect candidates who will actually execute their oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. That's it.
Good. Voter registration statistics show that unaffiliated and independent voters are the largest growing bloc.
Yes, about 30% of the voters in this state have rejected both the Republicans and the Democrats.
Are we ready to elect someone who's not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as I've traveled around the state, all I have heard is I am sick to death of the Democrats and the Republicans. I'm tired of the silly games. I'm tired of them fighting over us, and I'm tired of them separating us. So basically what it comes down to is you've got 2 different flavors of statism, people who want the state to own you and your children. And then you've got the libertarians over here who want you to be free. And then you've got me standing firmly on the Constitution saying the way for you and your kids and your grandkids to be free is to compel the government to serve the Constitution.
And I guess like any legal document, you have people that are what my old high school teacher would call strict constructionists.
Yes, sir.
And others who are loose constructionists or originalists.
I believe in original intent.
So original intent.
Yes, and I believe in original intent so much so that when we talk about the founding fathers who held other people in chattel bondage, there's no other word for them but hypocrite for that particular reason. I don't make excuses for that, but what I will say is that when we finally got to the point where we recognized each individual human being as a citizen whose rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness were endowed to them by God, and the government's only purpose was to secure those rights, we reached the pinnacle of Western civilization.
And if the federal Constitution, as amended, somehow, because there's a question of federalism
Yes,
and state constitutions,
right?
nullification crises.
Mm-hmm.
When those come up, what side do you fall on? States' rights or federal?
Well, it depends on the situation. I mean, the federal government has certain enumerated powers. The 10th Amendment makes it very clear that anything that's not listed in those enumerated powers falls immediately to the states and to the people. So if I'd have to have an actual scenario, but if the scenario is we're going to say you don't have a right to defend yourself by keeping yourself armed, I'd have to say, actually, you're mistaken. It's right here. It's in black and white. If you want to say that someone doesn't have a right to life, I'd have to say, actually, it's right here. It's in black and white in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men.
It's not in the Constitution.
No, it's the Declaration of Independence. Right. And the Constitution was founded to actually execute the principles that are laid out in the Declaration of Independence.
Is that spelled out in the Constitution anywhere?
Yeah, actually, in the preamble. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. In other words,
exactly reference the Declaration of Independence is a fascinating document because after the beautiful preamble, it's a list of offenses and
sure.
Claims against King's word
Right.
done to us.
And it goes on and says that any government that fails in these respects should be either altered or abolished.
Right.
And my intent as your chief executive is to alter it so it won't have to be abolished.
By doing what?
Well,
Like what is
by
what's
either-
wrong with it now?
there's nothing wrong with it. There's something wrong with the government.
Right.
So the Constitution's fine. Actually, I don't like the 16th and 17th Amendments, but there's a process to change that. It's in Article 5. As far as the West Virginia government, there are lots of things wrong. I mean, as a delegate, I served 2 terms in the West Virginia House of Delegates. I was elected twice as a Republican. That's the way I was raised. I will admit to you here and now that I didn't put the thought into it that I should have, that for years when I was serving in the Army, when I was overseas as a missionary in South America, I just kind of, that's my team, those are the good guys. I voted for the guy with the R, and it was foolish and it was naive. But since then, actually being inside the machine, I've come to understand just how profoundly corrupt it is. So what we need to do is we need to audit the entire executive branch, each function of the executive branch, starting with CPS, by the way, because that's where the most helpless people are, the people who can't speak up for their own rights, right, the children. So we start there. We audit it according to the Constitution, the West Virginia and the U.S. Constitution. The West Virginia Constitution, of course, says that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So you can't uphold the West Virginia Constitution without upholding the U.S. Constitution. So you audit them according to the Constitution, the actual laws that created the department and that function, the good operational principles, fiscal responsibility, and good personnel operations. You audit it according to, I will audit it according to all of those, and then I will make whatever changes that I can by changing policy, by changing personnel, and by issuing executive orders to the executive branch, which is the only right way to issue an executive order. Anything I can't fix as the chief executive through executive power, I will refer to the legislature. I will propose legislation that I would like for the legislature to deal with. And once they have done their bit, anything that needs to go through the judicial process, I'll take through the judicial process. But ultimately, I will bring everything to you, the people, because you are the sovereign power in the land. So I'll actually tell you, this is what's going on. Here's the guy who did this. Here's the guy who's in this committee who stopped this from happening. He works in this district. Here is his office phone number. Here is his office email address. Maybe you should let him know that you'll be looking for his replacement.
So I've been puzzled over the 1,200 pages of code that schools have to deal with. That's a monumental task.
It is.
It'll take a lot of leadership. So what's your leadership style?
Oh, well, that's a really good question.
How do you do this?
Well, I'm an infantry officer, so I believe in shooting people at dawn. I'm kidding. I actually had to take those psychological tests to determine my leadership style, to do some of the things that I did. And it was determined that I was an engaged visionary. That's the official term that I received back. So effectively, I'm a guy who looks beyond what's in front of me, sees forward to the vision that we should have for the future. I was also an operational and strategic planner for the Army, so I'm able to take that vision, back it up, and build strategic goals. Back it up from there and build strategic tasks to achieve those goals, all the way back down to the individual human being and the individual policy that needs to be changed. And it all starts with identifying a problem. One of the biggest problems that I had in the legislature was no one ever actually identified the specific problem we were trying to solve. They would just say, hey, we got a bunch of people mad about this, so we need to do something, and I think we need to do this. Based on what? No one did any analysis. They just made up things, and all of a sudden there were partisans for each of those proposed ideas, but very, very few of those ideas actually addressed a defined problem. pretty good at defining the specific problem.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
You got about 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Hi, my name is Marshall Wilson. I'm a retired combat veteran U.S. Army infantry officer. I was a missionary in the Peruvian Amazon where I started churches. My wife is a retired Navy captain. We have 9 children. Not real sure how that happened. 2 of them were adopted. I talked a lady out of an abortion and then adopted her twins. I have a master's degree in national security. I'm working on my PhD. I teach in a master's program at Liberty University on military operations. I served 2 terms in the West Virginia House of Delegates, elected twice as a Republican. Halfway through my 2nd term, I was literally thrown out of the Republican Party, quote, because according to the state chair of the West Virginia Republican Party, all I did was run around spouting the Constitution at everyone all the time. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Cool. Alrighty, next up is Marianne Clater. She's a small business owner, a former 22-year employee of the State Auditor's Office, and the Democratic Party's nominee for State Auditor of West Virginia. Please, Ms. Clater. Welcome. Please have a seat. Outstanding. All right, well, let's get this thing going here. First of all, this will enlighten me, as well as everybody else probably. What is the auditor's job, and how are you qualified to fulfill its duties? Yeah, if you don't mind, online audience. Hold it real close.
Okay, so the auditor is, based on our code, is the bookkeeper for West Virginia. And in that sense, it deals with the state level. So if you were to break it down in layman terms, that's like an accounts payable clerk in a sense. But we also do recording of transactions. And also, we are the supervisor of public offices. And in that role is where we perform the audits. I don't think people understand the level of audits that we do. We audit fire departments. We audit all of the elected officials' offices in the courthouse, municipalities, Board of Health, economic development authorities, ambulance authorities, school boards. I might be missing magistrate court systems. There is a lot of auditing goes on. And we're also, as supervisor of public offices, we're in charge of approving the budgets of local governments, the municipalities and the county commission, because county commission is charged with that function. And we're responsible for training of local government. So there is a great responsibility of the auditor's office.
Gosh, there certainly is. How are you qualified to take all that on?
Well, I am the only candidate, actually has an accounting degree, and I'm the only candidate that is a real auditor, has real auditing experience. I worked for the auditor's office for 22 years until my son became paralyzed from his neck down, and I left and started my own business because I loved the work that I did. So I continued to prepare financial statements and to provide training to local governments. So that's why, and that is one of the reasons that I decided to run again, is because I was out there and I'm seeing the great need and I know the potential that we have.
Sure, thank you. Would you prioritize continued local and state government transparency by building on the West Virginia checkbook, which is the tool that allows the public to see how money is spent?
So what I would do, that was a system that was pretty much piggybacked off of the state of Ohio. Being an auditor, we're a little skeptical about numbers and the information. We want to make sure that the source, that we can get that information straight from the source. Even when we go in and do an audit, if somebody's already printed some reports, we'll go back and make them print them again, just to make sure that those numbers didn't change from what what they're giving us. So with that system, there is a problem with how to get it into the state system. So I would like to work more directly with our local governments and the ones that have a website, that do have accounting systems. So you would have seen, a lot of people didn't realize before the pandemic that you could go online and pay your taxes. Well, that's a software program, and you were able to go online and do that. You're able to go online and look that information up. That information that you see, that is real time. So they also have bookkeeping. The majority of them have computerized because we mandated double entry accounting. So the majority of them have systems at the county level. Now, not all municipalities. I think that would be our weak spot. But I don't think this would be a weak spot for our county governments. To be able to, and I have worked with the accounting, with the computer companies, over the years. When people say they might not be able to give me some information I need, I didn't have any problem getting on the phone and saying, hey, I need a report that does this, that, that they would produce it. So that's what I want us to be able to trust that information. So I don't want there to be any chance that it could be manipulated before it got to us to be dumped.
Okay. This might be more of a comment than a question, but I'm curious about your take on it. So, I'm on a school board, and I look at the budget, and it's like, I have a doctorate, but it might as well be in Greek because of the way. Is checkbook legible to a regular citizen, or is it? Because I've never checked it.
Oh, you're saying
like
what we
I
have
can't
out there
understand
now?
the funding streams and lines and.
Actually, I feel like the one in Ohio is actually a little more simplified than ours because it actually looks like you're looking at a check. With ours, some of this search, because I use the system when I'm preparing financial statements to figure out what money local governments, have gotten, and the coding, whether it's a state grant or whether it's federal, I have to, separate that. So I would like it to be more user-friendly. I think sometimes as the need becomes, so like whenever we had the Roads to Prosperity, so all of a sudden they decide to throw a link on there. Well, we don't wait until people decide they want to see something and then throw a link on there. It needs to all be there, more user-friendly. That's why I feel like we have bypassed that. We bought that OASIS system, and we need somebody that's strong enough to hold people accountable when we pay for stuff. I don't know why we keep letting that bypass.
Okay, last question. Governor Justice frequently discussed how the state currently has more than $2 billion in several reserve funds. How would you ensure that all that is spent properly?
Well, this is one thing that the people have this misconception that the auditor can determine what we spend things on. What we can do is that so the legislature is the body that sets the budget. Now, we determine that people follow the rules on what's been laid down. So, but as an auditor, you won't hear those stories that you hear with the 465 million clawback. I would have had in place benchmarks that, okay, we're not meeting this spending, and I would have been telling the public about it too, because true transparency and following the law is going to require the citizens to become outraged about what their government is doing, speaking up, standing up, and holding them accountable. I will make sure that you know how our money is being spent. I will make sure we have waste watch reports, because I'll tell you, if you talk to any bookkeeper in the state of West Virginia, we're a nosy bunch of people, number one, and we constantly complain about spending. So I just don't want anybody to think, she let them, if the legislature approves it, then unless they don't follow the spending guidelines, as long as it is a legal expenditure, then the auditor's, hands are tied. Now, the auditor's mouth is not tied to be able to tell us what's going on.
Very good. We've got about a minute and a half for a closing statement.
I just want people people to know that I'm running for state auditor because I think that we need to raise the bar on politics. It has become very polarized. And people like me, it does become difficult for us to get elected to office. People that have the real passion for the work, people that understand the environment. And it's being used as a stepping stone to get to other positions. I believe we have this great potential for the state of West Virginia. We have this great potential for our local governments. But we need somebody in there that's going to know that we need to train people so that they will not have the opportunity to steal our hard-earned tax dollars. We need somebody that can stand up for the people of West Virginia, that's not afraid, based on whichever party that's in power, to be able to keep their mouth shut and go and with the status quo. I've never done it as an auditor. I've always stood up. I've always made sure people had the resources they needed to make sure that our money is protected and people are accountable for what positions they've been placed in. So I hope that you all will vote for Claytor for auditor and see what great work we'll be able to get done in the state auditor's office.
All right, thank you, Ms. President. Next up is Mr. Mark Hunt. He is an attorney, a former delegate, and current senator from Kanawha County. He's a father and the Republican Party's nominee for state auditor of West Virginia. In the house? Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt. Okay. We'll move on down to... Okay. Chris, did you hear that? Okay, we're going to skip down to county offices. Richie Holliday is a licensed mortician and owner of Morgan Funeral Home, father, and Republican nominee for Greenbrier County Commission.
Thank you for having this event, Stephen. Real West Virginia, and I'm glad to be here.
Okay, Mr. Holliday. As a first-time candidate, what is your sense of the role of a county commissioner?
So my sense on the role of county commissioner, basically, I guess you would say we would be the CEO of the county, the body of three. They basically run the county, make sure all the bills are paid, enact ordinances, spend the taxpayers' dollars wisely, and just make sure everything runs efficiently.
So I'm not familiar with, since I'm from Monroe County, sure things aren't here, but what means of keeping in touch with the electorate, with your constituents, would make sense besides, come find the minutes somewhere on our website kind of thing?
Right, so I'm a proponent of, and I've said this many times, Greenbrier County's courthouse's website needs a complete revamp. I think that our last budget that was posted on there is from 2021. Some of the ordinances that are on there are outdated. So I think that we need to have a real-time, up-to-date website that has current information on it. They do a fairly decent job about putting stuff out on Facebook about when planning commission meetings are, and so I think that I would like to see our website completely revamped. You mentioned you're from Monroe County. I know Clerk Jeremy Meadows very well, and he does an excellent job at making sure that everything is available through Monroe County on our website. So that's something that I would like to see Greenbrier County have.
Okay, good. So one thing that struck me once I got in the local government business was the fact that the county commission is so small.
Yes.
And this is 5 of us on the school board that, granted, we make important decisions, but their decisions affect the whole county, not just the student body. So how would you approach being one of only 3 with a vote in the decision-making body, in terms of getting things done, but also you have your own agenda for what the constituents want you to do?
Right. So I'm looking forward to working well with Commissioners Rose and Commissioner Tencher. I believe that any agenda that I may have would be what would be best for the people of Greenbrier County. So, you know, we just have us three, but we all would have our difference of opinion. I can promise you that I would always be my own person and have my own thoughts and opinions and my own vote on whatever would come up.
Good. And I'm gonna kind of throw off a lot of this stuff is stuff I think about from Monroe County. But I'm sure it's up here too.
Well, I lived in Monroe County for
So
10
you
years.
have municipal governments and a school board and a county commission. In your review of the situation as you were in the process of running, what's the dynamic? I mean, is it positive? Are there some bridges that need to be rebuilt, or is everything really just cool and fine, or what?
I'll leave the bridge building up to the Department of Highways. But it seems to me that Greenbrier County is doing rather well right now. You know, everything that I can foresee, everything's going really good with the infrastructure updates that they're doing. You know, I rode out to Rainelle today. Speaking of the DOH, they've got a paved road from the 20 and 60 interchange all the way to Rainelle. I was going down Monroe Drive. They're getting ready to start paving it, which really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the county commission. But you know, if stuff needs done like that, commissioners do have a role to kind of bring it up. You know, if something's not being done, to mention it to whatever department, DOH or whoever is necessary to, you know, get that work done.
And since the state seems to have the biggest purse, how would you advocate for Greenbrier County with state government?
I'm glad you asked that. So I have a lot of contacts in Charleston. You know, Senator Deeds is a very good friend of mine. Jack David Woodrum is a good friend of mine. I'm friends with both delegates, Campbell and soon to be hopefully Delegate Canterbury. I've got other contacts, J.B. McCuskey. It's good to have contacts in Charleston that you can actually pick up your cell phone and call their cell phone. You don't have to worry about going through all the back doors to get a hold of them and say, hey, you know, Greenbrier County, we really need this, or we really need that, or can you take a look at this for us, you know, to see if we're on par. The Attorney General's office, for example, you know, where Greenbrier County's comprehensive plan expired this month after its 10-year period. So it would be nice to be able to call JB and say, hey, we've got our comprehensive plan updated. Can your office take a look at this, make sure we're within, you know, our legal means of what we need to be doing.
Okay, thank you. And if elected, how would you communicate with your constituents, and the media to get your news out?
Sure, I'm always open and available by my cell phone. I've got a Facebook page, Richie Holiday for County Commission. I put a lot of information out on that, where I'm at, what I've been doing. Have a website. I don't think a website for a county commissioner is necessary, you know, really, unless you're running for office. But yeah, I think Facebook would be the best tool for us, because you know, a lot of people are on Facebook. Whatever news media we need to contact or do interviews with, I'd be open to doing that as well.
And I guess last question before a closing statement is what are kind of like your top 3 issues for Greenbrier County that need working on?
Sure. So absolutely, the first thing is, you know, like I said, our comprehensive plan went out of date this month. I believe it was October 14th. That absolutely has to be redone, because without doing that, we can't. They can't go into this new zoning that the Planning Commission has been working on. So those would be 2 major things. My biggest thing with being in government and an elected official is being open and honest, and make sure that our constituents know, you know, what's going on in the county, you know, where their tax dollars are being spent. So that would be kind of my third biggest thing that I'd like to see happen, is to make sure our website gets updated so all the information can be live, put out there, you know, so everybody knows what's going on. Those would be my 3 biggest things that I would like to see done immediately. You know, there are other projects I would like to see work on, but that would be, you know, on down the road.
Okay, super. You got about 3 minutes for closing statement.
Sure. My name's Richie Holiday. I'm the GOP's nominee for Greenbrier County Commission. I'm the father of 4 children, 2 of
whom are here on earth. I have a 10-year-old Alden, a 3-year-old Lucas, and my oldest son James passed away in June of 2020, and we have a stillborn baby. So first and foremost, I'm a father. I would greatly appreciate your vote to continue to advance Greenbrier County in the right direction. I want Greenbrier County to remain a place of excellence where my boys can feel like they are proud to say they're from Greenbrier County, proud to want to stay here in Greenbrier County when they're older, graduate high school or whatever. I had to move away to go to college for my degree, and I had to move to Monroe County to find a job because in my profession there are very limited jobs. But I could not ever wait to come back home to Greenbrier County. Greenbrier County is the diamond of the United States of America. I firmly believe that. And I think it's the greatest place to live and the greatest place to raise a family. So I greatly appreciate your vote. Early voting starts tomorrow. Vote tomorrow. Vote November 5th. Vote whenever you want to. Vote for Richie Holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Okay, next up is Mr. Brad Tuckwiller. He's a businessman, former county commissioner, father, and the Democratic nominee for Greenbrier County Commission. Welcome, sir.
Guess I know how Taylor Swift feels now.
That's right. It's a fourth wall. Good. So you've served as a commissioner previously, and what draws you back to the job?
It's time to return back to giving back to the county. So I had the opportunity, and I'm willing to do that. And I think I have the skill sets to help the county with its current situations.
Okay, thank you. Kind of run some of the other same questions. Since you've done this before, you've lived the intergovernment dynamics of municipalities and school boards and county commissions. Has that always been a smooth ride, or is there bumps? And if there's bumps,
Government does not function like the private sector. And it took me a year or two as a county commissioner to learn how slow or meandering it could be to be in government. But it does require a lot of collaboration. And I think one of your questions is going to lead into how I would manage being a commissioner and collaborating. And Lowell Rose and I have worked before in office as a county commissioner. And Tammy Tincher, I helped recruit her to be a county commissioner. She's a Democrat. So that's part of what I have the skill set to do.
Okay, thank you. If elected, how would you communicate with the electorate, the voters, the media, other interested parties, and sort of a proactive rather than reactive?
My cell phone number is out there, but the most common way to do that is when you're going to the grocery store, the hardware store, or someplace else. So I am available and approachable. I do have a real estate office here on the corner, so it's not like I'm reclusive. So I do not have a website. I'm not real active on social media, but at the courthouse I'll always be available, and my phone number is always available also.
Thank you. In terms of advocacy with state government, with its control of much of the budget, what's the plan to get the state government to?
Well, the state has some grant funding, but the majority of Greenbrier County has an $18 million budget for this fiscal year. And a lot of that comes from property taxes, and some of it comes from hotel occupancy tax, and then there are some other funding mechanisms. But it's not like we have, I feel it's not appropriate to rely upon grant money, because grant money is once or maybe twice, and then it's gone, and the county has to end up funding those services from its own property tax collection. So I'm not a big proponent of asking the state to send money back down to the county level.
Good. In terms of top three issues in the county that you see are either current or looming that the county commission needs to address?
Well, I think it's obvious we need to get the courthouse building finished. There are some sections of the government that is on leased property. Those need to return to the property that's being built or be finished with construction, so we don't have to pay rent monies. I also have
couple options in mind for the $2 million that's been wasted on the sportplex. I think it's important that we focus on either getting that property back to being serviceable to the community or liquidate it so we can find some way to recover those dollars. It's been a boondoggle for 6 or 7 years.
Pay. I don't know what the attitude is here, but there's a perception that it's a part-time job, and yet there's this pretty nice paycheck. And I don't know what it is in Greenbrier County. This is a kind of...
Well, it's standardized for each of the counties according to which classification you're in. There's about 5 or 6 different pay salaries, but it's characterized as a part-time job, but it's not, because if you go to the grocery store, you're going to get common county business or a county question, or just walking up and down the street. So it's characterized as part-time, but it's actually not. And the county commission appoints each of its members to different of the authorities or departments, such as the airport authority or the Department of Health. So there's always interaction and involvement with the other areas of county government.
Thank you. And then the last thing is the structure of the county, the very rural western part and the more suburban, urban eastern part. In a county commission of 3, how do you make sure that everybody gets the same voice?
Well, it's kind of odd that we're each 3 chosen by the different magisterial districts, but actually we're all voted upon by the county. So we're not incumbent to depend upon, I'm supposed to represent the central district and act only for them. So I collaborate with the other 2 commissioners, but when the dust settles, the county commission job is actually managing people and managing the budget. And one of my biggest disappointments from my prior term was we had a comprehensive plan for the county which focused or emphasized more investment on the western end of the county. And I could not get my other 2 commissioners to vote to approve that. So we failed, and I feel bad about that. We wanted to emphasize more investment in the Sand Black, Rupert, and Raynell areas, and that's, I did not understand that, and I couldn't convince them. And that was my largest disappointment.
Thank you. You have closing arguments?
My background is in finance and banking, and I'm familiar with large numbers and how to manage those. My focus would be on initially getting the budget, because by the time this office takes place in January, we would be halfway through the fiscal year, and it's important to know how much money has been allocated to each of the other elected officials within the courthouse. And it's important to note, many people don't understand, that although the county commission sets the budget, the only time we have any impact on those elected officials is at one time a year when we set the budget. After that, the sheriff, the county clerk, the circuit clerk, each of those, and the prosecuting attorney, each of those different elected officials are their own fiefdom within the county. We're not their CEO. We are merely their funding mechanism, and then we have to watch and see how they spend their money. And we get 1 chance a year to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
Next up is Ms. Kayla McCoy, a chef, community organizer, former director of Greater Greenbrier Long-Term Recovery, and mother, and the Democratic nominee for the House of Delegates in District 47, which comprises Western Greenbrier County. Come on. Alrighty. You have a background in flood response, and how would that inform your work as a delegate?
I was a 25-year-old single mother of a 2-year-old working as a chef here in Greenbrier County when the flood hit in 2016. And I left my career to start an organization to help the people who were affected by that disaster. I spent 5 years of my life doing the work the government of West Virginia failed to do, and serving the people of West Virginia in the ways that they deserve to be served. Even though I left that position in 2021 and I have returned to my culinary roots, I'm still that person for a lot of people in this community. And so I go through my daily and my weekly life with many requests on everything from how do I find a home for someone who needs a difficult situation to, hey, how do I pay my water bill on the new website for Alderson? So I think that it's just who I am as a person, and I will continue to operate in that way.
Super, thank you. Crichton Elementary, which is in your district, may close next year. And other counties have announced closures and consolidations as well. Monroe County went through this a few decades ago. How concerned are you about that and other potential school closures across the state?
I am very concerned about the closure of Crichton Elementary School. Have you been to Crichton?
I have not.
So there's not much there besides the school, and it is essentially a hub for that community. We would not be in this position if education was funded in the state of West Virginia that it should be. We wouldn't be facing the closure of this school. I have a friend who I know from my time during flood recovery. She's the mother of a student at Crichton Elementary, and she's very concerned about what it would mean for her autistic son to have to transition to another grade school before going to middle school, and how that's going to affect his ability to function in the classroom, which could be completely avoided for families such as hers if we just fund education the way that we should be, and we keep public education dollars in public education in the state of West Virginia.
Speaking of public education, since I'm a retired teacher and current board member, I'm in touch with all my former colleagues. And it seems like every time a benefit comes along, like a pay raise or a tax cut, PEI rates go up and offset whatever gain the educators got. What's your idea about fixing or changing or eliminating or whatever PEIA? How do we fix it?
We're getting the heavy-hitting questions here this evening. PEIA, I will be the first to tell you I don't know much about it, truthfully, which may reflect poorly on me as a candidate, and it's such a huge issue that affects a lot of people in West Virginia. But a raise is not a raise for a public servant if you are just adjusting the numbers to continue to take from the coffers. If you're just raising the numbers to continue to take dollars out of public educators' pockets or out of, the town employees around here are all on PEIA as well. So there needs to be a collaborative effort, a bipartisan effort to find a solution to PEIA that benefits the people who are keeping West Virginia open and moving.
Okay, and you're flowing right into my next question, which is bipartisanship. When I first moved to the state in 2011, things appeared to be fairly cooperative, and I don't see that so much anymore at the State House. So how do we get back to a place where we can have conversations instead of just kind of rolling along?
Well, first we have to restore some equilibrium to the representation in Charleston. There are 16 women in our state legislature. That is insane when women make up 50% of the population of the state of West Virginia. And so there's not only just the bipartisan balance to restore, but there's also a gender equality balance to achieve. You can't even say restore on that one because we've never had it. So I put my name on the ballot to be a woman, a working class woman in West Virginia, to have a seat at the table, because as one of my heroes once said, women belong in the room where decisions are being made. As far as sitting down and being able to have a conversation with someone and remove those partisan elements from it, I would default to my work in disaster recovery. When disaster strikes, when a pandemic happens, when school closes and you don't know how you're going to feed your children. It doesn't matter how you're registered to vote. It doesn't matter your voting history. It doesn't matter if you vote. Hard times like this affect everyone. And so we as West Virginians have always come together to get through hard times. And we're in a hard time right now in the state of West Virginia. And I think if we are willing to put our partisanship aside and look at what truly affects us as West Virginians, as Appalachians, and be willing to look at someone and say, I don't really care what letter is after your name. We have an issue here. Can we please find a solution? Can we please push through this?
Okay, thank you. If elected, how would you stay in touch with your constituents?
I think everyone in Green Borough County has my phone number at this point. I am very accessible at work. I'm there 6 days a week, usually 8 a.m. till at least 5 p.m. I've never been great at taking a picture of a good thing that I'm doing and then sharing it with the world and, look at how excellent this thing is that I did. I'm very reserved in that regard, but I am accessible by social media, in person, via telephone, and I also really like the way that Delegate Kayla Young has cultivated a mailing list where she, on a weekly basis, sometimes more than once a week, will communicate via that mailing list. This is what went on in Charleston this week. This is how I voted on it. Here's my reasoning behind why I voted this way. Here's what you can do if you don't like this. And I think that would be something that I would implement if I were elected. It seems very from the source. And so I've followed that for a while and really appreciate that.
Super, thank you. You have about 2 minutes for a closing argument.
Okay. My name is Kayla McCoy. I am a Democrat running for House of Delegates in the 47th District. And I am doing that so that West Virginia can be the kind of place that my daughter does not have to leave to be successful. And I think that is something that we can all get behind, that we need to rebuild this state in a way that our greatest export doesn't have to leave anymore. And that's truthfully, that's the base of it.
Super, thank you so much. Next up is Mr. Paul Datch, a successful attorney, Green Borough County Democratic Party Executive Committee Chair, and Democratic nominee for House of Delegates in District 6, which comprises Eastern Green Borough County. Welcome, Mr. Datch. Alrighty, sir. In what ways will your legal background help you in your work as a delegate?
Well, obviously, 51 years of practicing law, I've had to use the laws that are generated in Charleston. It's brought me in contact with not only municipal governments, but county governments, and of course the court system. I know where the rubber meets the pavement in terms of what our government and the laws do. And I believe that I not only have the ability from my experience to know how it affects people, but I can draw upon that and hopefully share some of my life's experiences with it, but also saying what's practical and what's impractical. One of the things that people need to know, of all the things that I want to do, is I want to keep government at long arms, but at the same time, government has got to work for the people. And so it's a balancing act, and basically I've seen how it works, I know how it needs to be institutionalized, and I believe that I can write the laws that will be practical and benefit the people.
I appreciate kind of the two sides of the same coin of government out, government in. Could you give me an example of keep government at arm's length and an example of government activism or involvement?
The government has to serve the people, and I'm a trickle-up economist. I believe that government has got to make sure that our children are fed, make sure we've got good schools, make sure that our roads are adequately maintained and our bridges are kept up. At the same time, though, we've got to make sure that police officers are properly trained, properly equipped, so that they can do their job and not feel like they have to have a chip on their shoulder and be thugs in the community. Our police have got to also understand that they are servants of the people, and they can be. Many of our police officers are wonderful people, good citizens, but at the same time they need to be supported. At the same time they also need to be said that, by the way, your boss are the people.
Thank you. So your party is currently part of a super minority. How can you serve your constituents in that situation?
If I go to the legislature, there are two primary jobs that I've got to do. One is I've got to inform the public as to what is going on. And secondly, we have to offer an alternative. And it comes to the Republican government, they've been a disaster for the last 14 years. We've lost 75,000 people in West Virginia. 23,000 of those just in the last 3 years prior to this one. Our schools are ranked 49th. Our teachers are basically one of the poorest paid in the country. We have the most unnecessary deaths of all the states in the country, and that's partially because we don't have ambulance systems and for rural purposes. Our hospitals are being set up so that basically you go to the hospital and then you have a 100-mile ride to get to another hospital that can actually treat you. This state's basic needs have been ignored by the Republican Party for 14 years, and the best that I can do is to at least go back and be like the canary in the coal mine and say, by the way, this place is going down the Republican toilet, and I intend to make sure that it doesn't do it without a fight.
So flows right into my next question, which is, how do you get that word out? What's your media strategy or communication strategy?
It is extremely difficult because forums like this don't happen very often. The Republicans have not had the nerve. Yes, Ben Anderson. They've not had the nerve to show up and talk and defend their position. Jim Justice has treated our state the same way he's treated the Greenbrier Hotel. He's bled off people. He's basically taken our government, and we've diminished the quality of our teachers. We've diminished the quality of the people working for our government, and we need to restore our government. That should be the number one priority we have. But our government needs to be restored for the people.
Which, in any case, depending on the results of the election, even if it's a close Democrat-Republican balance, anything that moves forward is going to require cooperation. So how do you defend your position as a Democrat, but also work with those Republicans to get things moving?
Republicans are not my enemy, nor am I their enemy. What we need to do is to draw people together to remember that we are all West Virginians, and that we need to try to encourage our children, make this place a place where people want to live. And I can do that, or believe that we can do it, because I've been doing it the same way I've been doing in the court system. We have adversaries, but we get along. We can be friends and still disagree. I love my wife, but it doesn't mean we agree on everything. And that's the way I feel about Republicans. They're just Americans. They're West Virginians. They just see things a little bit different.
Good. I'm going to ask one specific question, and then you have closing argument, and it's the PEI issue. What to do? Rates keep going up, co-pays keep going up.
This is part of the switch and bait of the Republican Party. West Virginia's teachers are paid 49th in this country. Now, what did they do? They gave them a 5% pay increase during a time in which we had a 12% inflation. That's basically a 7 or 8% cut. What did they then do? They cut their benefits so that their spouses don't get the same benefits. You can't get quality teachers for West Virginia where they can drive for 50 miles in any direction and get a $20,000 a year pay increase. We've got to try to make our schools competitive. We've got to make our university competitive. They had 171 faculty members quit this year at WVU. And that's because they don't see any leadership. And why is it that people are leaving this state? It's because of our legislature. Our legislature is not giving guidance by saying, here are our problems, and here's what we can do about them, and here's how we can join together to try to work as a people of our state to make this a better place to live.
All right, we got 2 minutes to close it up.
I'm Paul Detch. I spent my undergraduate years at a Ohio school studying political science and government. I went to the University of Missouri and taught government and worked on a graduate degree. And then I went to law school and spent 3 years learning law. I've spent now 51 years in the Greenbrier Valley trying to defend people, trying to represent people like you, common ordinary people, people that worked hard. Yes, sometimes they did horrendous things, but my father always told me they are human beings and they deserve to have a friend in the courtroom. I spent 18 years teaching medical law at the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine. And we have got to do something to make sure that we have quality care for people in our rural areas. That means protecting our hospitals, protecting our first responders, to make sure that people in our rural areas have available to them affordable care. Right now, if you're closing down all the mom and pop pharmacies and you have to drive another 20 miles to get your prescription filled, you've added costs. We need to keep those costs down, and we need to make sure that our quality stays up. I am Paul Detch. I am running for House of Delegates as a Democrat in the 46th District, and I want and I need your vote, but I need your support for the ideas that we're trying to sell.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, Ben, I hope you didn't mind the reference.
Mrs. Denise Morrissey, his wife Patrick Morrissey, Republican nominee for governor, and tonight she will be speaking on his behalf. How are you doing? Okay. So I have 2 audience questions for Ms. Morrissey, and then I'm going to extend her time so she can also. Okay. Okay. I'll ask the questions when you're done.
It's a really privilege of my lifetime to be up here on behalf of my husband. I'm a military kid. I grew up as an Air Force brat. My dad was served in the Air Force for 47 years. He was a phenomenal man, and I married a man very much like him. Very public servant oriented. Would give you the shirt off his back. Most people don't see Patrick up in front and personal the way I get to every day, and Julia, my daughter. Patrick is her stepfather, but has been a tremendous influence in her life and a big champion of hers. A big champion of women and young women, and it's what kind of attracted me to Patrick from the day I met him. We met in Washington, D.C. when he worked as chief of staff at the Energy and Commerce Committee, where he was advocating for drug coverage in the Medicare program and making sure that seniors had access to the drugs that they needed every day. And he is one of the kindest people I know. So in terms of, we both grew up in middle-class families. Given that I grew up on a military base, I went to 3 different high schools. And when Patrick ran for Attorney General in 2012, he moved to West Virginia in 2006. Was very dedicated to trying to make a difference in West Virginia and to provide new opportunities for lower income, middle class families, which is how we were raised. And I'm very committed to and very supportive of the things I heard some of the Democratic folks talking about tonight. Making a difference for everyone, not just making a difference for one class of citizens in our state. It's so important. I'm a healthcare person, consultant. My mom died from cancer. My father died from Alzheimer's. I lost 104 pounds over the last 4 years once I understood that Alzheimer's is connected to dementia, and dementia, Alzheimer's dementia, are completely connected to obesity and chronic health conditions. If there's one thing that we can do is educate people on really how to change the trajectory of their lives. Watching my father suffer, my dad was a deacon in the Catholic Church for 25 years, and the day Patrick and I got married, my father confused me with my sister. That's the day I really understood there was something wrong, and that was in 2008. I watched him suffer for almost a decade. And in the final years of his life, I watched my mom take care of my father with such a passion and such a love. And it was heartbreaking for all of us. My dad was a brilliant, equivalent of a 3-star general in the Air Force. He ran the budget at the Pentagon, which is how I ended up in Virginia. And I watched that love story. Today is their anniversary of their wedding. And so it's such an honor for me to remember the love that they shared on the last day that my mother saw my father in the memory care center. She had been gone 6 or 7 weeks, sick with bladder cancer herself. She was his caregiver. And she took such gentle care of him for so long and dedicated her entire life to him and his military career. And the last time we took her there, 3 weeks before she passed away, he looked across the room. He hadn't recognized her in a couple years. And he ran across the room and said, "Marilyn." And he hugged her, they kissed, and she looked up at me and said, "Can we go home now?" Because that's how she wanted to remember him. And that is true love, but it's what we're all facing in terms of caregivers. We have people across our state every single day who are suffering, drowning, because they have no help. They have no folks working and supporting them. And I am a huge advocate for helping those caregivers that are taking care of their husbands, their wives, their brothers, their sisters, their kids. It is a huge burden that our citizens are facing in the state. My husband is a huge advocate. I'm trying to get you guys to know who Patrick is, what motivates him, what moves him, education for our kids. Kayla, what she was talking about in terms of making sure that the children in the state stay here. What can we all do to help and support each other? That's who Patrick is. That's the man I married, a man very much like my dad, who will look at budgets, make hard decisions, help our state move forward. But there's a lot of things we can do together to collaborate, to work in communities. I love Greenbrier County. One of the things, my parents were both suffering, both passed away in 2016 to 2018. Greenbrier County was in between my parents and Charleston, where I could support my parents driving 3 hours back and going to Charleston to try and support what Patrick was doing. I fell in love with Greenbrier County. I fell in love with the people. I remember during the flood of 2016, we had a home on Ingleside, and I remember our basement flooding. I remember going out and trying to help people with supplies, going door to door, and the thing that I remember the most, and it makes me think of what's going on in North Carolina and South Carolina and other hard areas, I would knock on doors, we'd have brooms, mops, supplies, whatever, and people would say to me, "Please go help my neighbor. They need it more than me." These houses were crumbling. They were devastated. And I just thought to myself, I'm a military kid. I never got to live places very often. And I was so moved and touched that these people said, "Go help my neighbors. Before me, I want my neighbors to be helped." That's Greenbrier County. That's what I fell in love with. That's West Virginia. That is a community I longed to be part of when I was a little girl, hoping that I could be in a community. You guys are so lucky. You have no idea how great it is to grow up in a small community, be part of a community where everyone knows each other. I'm so honored that I've been welcomed into this community by so many people. I love it. Military kids, they go to different schools almost every year. You sit in the corner of a room. When you walk in, you know you're not going to probably be there the following year. You don't get that opportunity. And it's such an honor to be here tonight, especially in Greenbrier County, the county I've fallen in love with. I love West Virginia. My husband loves West Virginia, wants to make a difference, and we would be honored to have your vote. I'm 100% supportive of supporting Patrick in any way I can. And really, caregiving, Alzheimer's, all the various disease states that people are facing today. I'd like to be helpful in any way I can with Patrick, supporting his efforts, and really supporting any effort I can to be supportive of him.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And that's Next up is Pam Klein. She's a member of the Nicholas County Democratic Executive Committee, and tonight she will speak on behalf of Steve Williams, Democratic nominee for governor.
Thank you guys, and it's so great to be in Greenbrier County. This is one of my favorite places. I'm Pam Tucker Klein from Nicholas County. I'm the chair of the Democratic Executive Committee in Nicholas County, and I'm so proud to represent the Democratic. First of all, I'm proud to be a Democrat. I remember what Democrats have done for the state, and I hope we can continue to do more as we elect more Democrats. He built a successful career in banking and finance in Chicago, working with one of the largest investment firms in the world. But despite the bright lights and big opportunities, Steve had the call of West Virginia, coming back to West Virginia. He knew that his heart belonged here, and he made the choice to bring his experience and his expertise back home. He understood that the skills he honed in the private sector, helping individuals, small businesses, and corporations achieve the goals, could even be put to greater use in his service to the people of West Virginia. When Steve returned, he found a new calling, public service. He took on the role of Huntington City Manager and was later elected mayor, where he proudly served 3 terms. Now let me paint a picture of the Huntington Steve inherited, and we've talked about that a little bit tonight. The city was in a sharp decline. Essential services were being slashed. I've got to talk from notes, or I just jump a little off and hit that on top of you. First responders were facing layoffs, and the city's bond rating was downgraded as it struggled to pay its bills. Huntington was at a crossroads. And my co-chair, Terry Regenball's with me tonight. We sat in Steve's office, and he emotionally told us the things that he did to bring Huntington back to where it is today, how he didn't just look at it as the center of the opiate crisis. He provided care back to his first responders. He got help for them. They were going out on a daily basis and having several overdoses in a day. So he brought his community together and the people that mattered most together to figure out how to beat this opiate crisis in Huntington. He wasn't about to let his hometown fall by the wayside. He rolled up his sleeves and he got to work. Under his leadership, Huntington has undergone nothing short of a renaissance. He restored the city's bond rating, revitalized downtown, rehired first responders, and more importantly, he significantly lowered the crime rate, especially violent crime. Huntington was just named by WalletHub.com as one of the top 100 safest cities in America. That just came out just in the last couple days. It has been transformed from being known as ground zero for the opioid crisis to being known as the city of solution, and is being used as a template for other cities across the United States. And all of this was done without raising taxes. In fact, Steve's administration cut taxes, including the B&O tax to encourage businesses to invest in downtown Huntington. And all of this, Steve's approach was simple but powerful. He believes in building up and not tearing down. He's not interested in the politics of division or destruction. He's interested in growth, opportunity, and progress, and he's proven that he knows how to get results. Steve Williams is uniquely qualified to be our next governor. He's not just another politician, he's a leader with a proven track record as a chief executive. While his opponent, Patrick Morrissey, has spent his career as a lawyer and a pharmaceutical company lobbyist, Steve has been an investment banker, a legislator, a city manager, and the mayor of West Virginia's second largest city for 3 terms. Each of these roles has prepared him to lead our state toward a brighter future. Steve knows that to build a brighter future, we need to create opportunities that allow our children to stay at home and our families to stay together. That means attracting high-wage jobs of the future by offering business fair taxation, a well-trained and educated workforce, and a predictable regulatory environment. As your next governor, Steve will deliver just that. He will focus on creating a business climate that fosters innovation and growth, while also ensuring that every West Virginian has the opportunity to succeed. He believes in a West Virginia where businesses flourish, families prosper, and our communities thrive. Steve Williams believes that West Virginia is on the cusp of something great. We have the potential to be a state where opportunity abounds, where our natural beauty is matched by our economic vitality, and where every West Virginian has the chance to a better life. But to get there, we need leadership that understands the challenges we face and has a proven record of turning these challenges into opportunity. Steve's done it in Huntington, and he's ready to do it again for the entire state. So I ask you tonight to join this journey. Let's work together to elect a governor who knows what it takes to lead, who has the experience to back up his vision, and who has the heart and determination to make West Virginia all that it can be. It is very clear we have 2 very different men running for this critically important state office. It is time to take our state in a new direction, the direction of someone who will be the people's governor, the direction of someone who will be all the people's governor. It's too important to call us, the citizens of this beautiful state, not to take us in a direction that isn't in the best interest of all of us. So thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to a better West Virginia. Let's make history together. Let's elect Steve Williams to be the best governor West Virginia has seen in a long time. Please vote for Steve Williams for governor of West Virginia.
All righty, thank you everyone for attending. The Real West Virginia will provide recaps in the coming days. Early voting begins tomorrow, so vote early but not often. And election day is November 5th. Thank you very much for your attention.